When I'm rubbing my right buttocks cheek, I often think about how I am a part of a generation that likes to change tradition. And sometimes that could be a good thing because you look at the old ways and you think, those are old ways that don't really fit in the here and now. Let's spruce it up just a little bit. And in my opinion, there's no greater old tradition than a wedding. You meet somebody, you fall in love, you go on dates, you go on vacations, you get to know them. Eventually, if you're a male, you get on one of your knees and you pop something out and you say, "Will you take my last name and marry me?" And she says, "Yes, I will." And you put the ring on and it's not the right size. So you go to the dealer and you get it resized and then you put it on and she's like, "Oh my God, it's the perfect ring." And then you invite a bunch of people, many of them you don't like or don't even know, and they stare at you. They watch your wife walk down the aisle in that beautiful dress. They watch you say vows. They hear one person say "I do," and then they hear another person say "I do," and then they watch y'all touch lips and y'all run off into thousands of dollars in debt because nobody thought to plan the wedding financially. And when you hear all these beautiful stories about weddings and how the dress was so beautiful and how the groom was so handsome and how the bridesmaids were all so elegant and the groomsmen were all so handsome, it makes you wonder when you're going to get married so that you could fall into those same traditions. But what if we eventually said enough with the traditions and we decided that in some form of fashion we were going to change this up a little bit to be more diverse and to show respect to the hardworking woman who had to say yes to getting married to somebody that they just picked up off of Tinder or Bumble, and we changed this structure to where the male in this young woman's life, the father, is not going to be walking this young woman down the aisle to give her away to another man because the patriarchy is not so favorable to women, and we must change this structure up. But with changing traditions, you have to understand that some people are not going to want to support it, and even in scenarios, not want to give you any money to help you in your endeavors that you plan, like what you're about to hear now.
My dad just decided he's not going to pay for my wedding anymore. What I'm finding out is if you let your parent pay for your wedding, you kind of have to do it their way. I finally told my parents, I'm going to do this my way, and they backed out of paying for it. So let me tell you what happened. I have to give credit where credit is due. My parents raised me to be an independent thinker. And as an independent thinker, I've decided we're not going to do every single wedding tradition at my wedding. And that's where the fight comes in with my dad. It's the year 2023. Women are not property anymore, which is why I decided I will be walking myself down the aisle. My parents do not own me, and I'm not some property to be given away. My dad was not very happy to find out he wouldn't be walking me down the aisle. In his eyes, I'm taking away one of the most important parts of the day. Apparently, a first dance with my father isn't enough. My dad keeps going back to the point of, "We've never treated you as property. Why would you say that?" He's also trying to say I'm discrediting everything him and my mom have done for me, which to me just feels unrelated. Like, I'm just not a fan of that tradition. I feel like he's been talking to his buddies because the other day he came back to me and said, "Well, if you want to be independent, then you can pay for it yourself." Which to me still feels like if you're not going to do your wedding the way I want, then I'm not going to pay for it. And that just doesn't feel right to me. So anyways, do we agree that my dad's being a complete jerk right now? Really hoping he comes around because there's no way I can afford this wedding if he doesn't help me with it. So I'm just kind of holding out hope that he'll come through.
It should be stated before anybody gets mad and they throw up their pitchforks, this woman was reading a Reddit story, which is something she usually does on her TikTok account, and she even showed her wedding where her father walked her down the aisle. And while she will sit there and maybe give her opinions and talk as if this story is her story, it's when she's doing a follow-up where she shows that she was walked down the aisle by her father, where she makes some drastic observations about the concept of marriage.
Women are not property, and it's wild to me to think we used to be sold off to men. And in some places, that is still done. My last post may have been confusing, but I did let my dad walk me down the aisle at my wedding. That came from a Reddit story. I'm a wedding photographer, and I've noticed a lot more bride and grooms ditch old wedding traditions. The number one being the garter toss. And in case you didn't know, the garter toss came into play because people saw the bride's clothing as good luck and fertility, and so they would literally try to rip the clothes off of the bride at the wedding and take some with them. And so they started the garter toss as a way to make sure the bride got to keep her clothes on, and also still spread the good luck. Which is just creepy. Another weird wedding tradition is the white dress to show a bride's virginity. You know the tradition where the groom doesn't see the bride until she walks down the aisle? It originates from arranged marriages, where it was feared that the groom might walk out and find the bride unattractive. That one actually shocked me. I did not know that. If you can think of any more weird wedding traditions, drop them in the comments.
Might I just say, as somebody who is a desperate American man in the year 2024, who often dreams about one day becoming a bridesmaid at someone's wedding, I don't really think that you can compare a few scenarios where you just read about them in the news to you and your regular life. Because while it is true that there are individuals who are being sold off to others, some would say illegally, you cannot equate that to the two people who are falling in love, and the whole concept of following the traditions of marriage falls in with what they want to do. You can't bring your bitterness from other people, especially from Reddit, to others and expect them to maybe follow it, and to expect anyone who's paying for the wedding to also go along with it. Wherever this father is that didn't want to pay for this wedding and they didn't want to support it because his daughter didn't want to follow with tradition, congratulations, I'm on your side. Because if you think about the moment where you see your young child who you had coitus to make fall in love, and you see her happy and you want to be a part of that happiness, where you give her away in the whole tradition of marriage and she takes that away from you, why the fuck would you support it financially? Oh, because that's your daughter. But guess what? Your daughter made a grown woman decision, so guess what? She's gonna have to live with the grown woman consequences. Such is love, such is life. Shrek is love, Shrek is life. And when you have people who have money and you strip them the opportunity to do something, guess what? The often consequence is they're gonna take their money and bring it somewhere else. Maybe they'll put it towards the son's wedding if he's going around and actually being a man and not being one of these people who's just bitching about women 24/7 thinking that he's an alpha male. I do understand that times were not favorable to the women. That is a significant part of history that should be acknowledged, still is acknowledged, and in some cases is still being done to this day. However, you cannot equate yourself and your situations to everything else that is happening outside of your little bubble and expecting everyone to care about it at the exact same time. That's not how that's gonna go, and to think a Reddit story is somehow going to open this dialogue of conversation to the point where you're now going to see daughters looking at their fathers and saying, "You shall not walk me down the aisle, and I shall not think about being sold by you," because oftentimes I'm going to bet my pinky fingers and my testicles that the father just wants to be a part of the moment with his child. He's not really thinking, I spent a lot of good money, you're getting sold tonight, bitch. And for anyone who has insight on the processes of weddings, let me know in the comment section. Am I out of line for thinking that this woman's weird and the woman whose story she's reading off is weird for trying to compare their own weddings and situations to others that have happened in the past and in current times? And also, who has a wedding available where you will allow me to be the bridesmaid? Because I would like to say, if we're breaking traditions, I look very good with some glitter on. Subscribe to the channel. I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.